don't know why it is with brand. People don't really understand what it is. And so they sort of make up what they think it is in a way that you don't do that with finance or with operations or with, other parts of a business.
We're going to turn this into a book.
Yeah.
27 states.
Yeah. Let's do it. I've learned how publishing works. So
you know how publishing works.
Let's do it again.
I know how to make shit up.
Yeah.
Together, it's going to be great.
What the AI content is doing is based on everything that's been made before.
Yeah.
So it's essentially a distilled read of the average point of view that's already been published. And so it just creates noise, but no cut through.
Hello Unicorners, Happy New Year to you. I hope you have a really big party planned for tonight with your friends and family. Think about the dogs and cats though if you're going to be letting off fireworks. Certainly Blakey, our dog, petrified of fireworks. Anyway, look, hope you have a really good night. Now, today we have a special show for you. I invited Rachel Fairley, co-host, back into the studio today, and she and I are going to talk about the year ahead. Importantly, I'm also going to talk about her book, because when we first met Rachel, she was in the middle of writing it. And I was really pleased that she was able to come and host some shows for us, because writing a book is no mean feat. Now, that book is now written. It's called Rebrand Right. It is on pre-sale now, by the way, on all bookshop websites, and it's published on the 22nd of April next year. I've read it, by the way. I was very kindly sent a pre-draft to read it before it went to the publishers, and it is fantastic. It's a really good read, and we're going to talk about that book a little bit today. And we're also going to cover what we're calling 27 states at the moment, which is a look at how different frameworks and playbooks might be appropriate for different companies based on the maturity of the product, the market, and the company. That's all coming up. Let's go straight to the studio. Hey Rachel, how was your Christmas?
Amazing.
What did you get up to?
We went skiing.
Cool. I haven't been skiing in ages.
I used to love summer holidays, but now getting to the end of the term, especially with the kids, and going into Christmas, getting straight out into the mountains.
Yeah, there's something about mountains, isn't there? And the air, and just like all of your troubles
everything
melt away.
melts, because this is grueling. The slide from summer to winter I find grueling.
Especially this year. I mean, it has been the mother of all years, this one.
I just want to put it behind me.
It's interesting, when we got to the end of 2023, I did, you do the big decks, you do your annual planning, and I go and see the investors and say, all right, this is what we think the year ahead is going to look like. And we have the OECD forecasts and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, how are we thinking? Because the investors are super smart. Like, what do you think about the economy? And we're saying, all right, well, we think the economy is going to be flat.
Yeah.
Maybe 0.5 to 0.9%, something like that, we figured. And we figured that we might then also, as a business, we might flatline, and that's fine. Flatline we can manage.
Yep.
God, I'd take flatline any day of the week.
I think everyone would. I mean, the noise from everyone is what an awful roller coaster of a year it's been, and so unpredictable. What I wonder about is how I think all bets are off for next year, because it really depends on how.
It's just too unknown, isn't it? I will say, actually, Q4, things started to pick up a little bit. Particularly in financial services. And sometimes I think that can be a bit of a bellwether. Like, if confidence is returning to the market, then, maybe the money might start flowing. And I think we're going to come back to that maybe a little bit later. Yeah. But what I really wanted to do to start with today, you came in and did the Brand Master episode, which was fab. I really enjoyed it.
When was that? Beginning of the year, wasn't it?
It was the beginning of the year, I think now, yeah.
I feel like I've known you for decades, and we've not even known each other a year.
Well, that day, actually, I remember both of us saying, God, there was a chemistry and it's fun.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. And Nicola, producer.
New best friends.
We all got on really well. So then I was really excited. We invited you, came back, actually joined the project. So you're now one of the co-hosts, which is great. But when we met you the first time, you were writing a book with Sarah.
Yeah. Who
you then subsequently interviewed, which is great. So I think our listeners know part of the story, but that book is now done. It's finished. It's away being, printed. They're licking the pages and sticking to the spine or whatever they do.
I actually have in my bag the typeset version of it, which is as close as you get to real before that box arrives and you get to pull it out of.
That's great.
Yeah, what an amazingly interesting experience. I mean, I've learned about publishing.
Yep.
I've learned about writing, the discipline of doing something where you are the only person who's going to make you do it, and holding, Sarah and I holding each other true to it. But also just how extraordinary cathartic, like really cathartic it is to take everything you know and share it in a way where people can actually do something with it. I mean, I feel really proud. But by April it will be very real, but it's already on pre-sale.
Oh, is it really?
It's on
fantastic.
Pre-sale. I know.
Wow. So April's the published date was great. When you went through the process of doing it, when you were codifying all those things you knew, did you discover any new things? There's
about 236 or something sources in the book. Like we've read everything.
Bloody hell.
And even at the point where we were on the final edit and something came out and we were like, I'm going to have to put that in. So what's been amazing is going through all the academic, all the thought leadership, all the books, as well as the articles and that, and figuring out why things work the way they work and what you actually need to know, and then how to do that and what your options are. And it's that connection between the intellectual, academic, and also analysis, like what makes for efficiency versus effectiveness and so on. And then taking that into thinking about how people actually execute their marketing. So what do you need to practically do? Okay. And is there any difference between consumer and government and business-facing marketing teams about how they do it? There isn't. But taking it all the way through and going, this is how you diagnose the situation. This is how you define what the answer is. And then this is how you actually deliver it through the experience, through the marketing, through the engagement, through your people, like the whole package. So it's been fantastic because we've got to read some work from the most amazing minds. But it's that connection between, okay, so I get it. I just don't really know what to do with it. Or I know what I do, but I can't really explain why I do it.
But I'm guessing a lot of those books you've had to read as well are not easy. Like a lot of the more academic tomes really take some commitment to get through.
They take an entire pot of coffee. They take sitting in my office in the window with the sun streaming down on me. I have to make myself feel like I'm somewhere really fun and lovely. Yeah. And I'm doing my homework. Yeah. Because if I try and do it sitting at a desk, I get that sort of, A-levels feeling, sixth form kind of, end of school where you're just, I've got to do this, I've got to get through it. But I've learned a lot. And what I absolutely adore about working with Sarah is that she is so bright and she's so knowledgeable and we don't always agree. We genuinely don't always agree.
Nothing wrong with a bit of dissonance.
And we have to talk it through to the point where one of us says, literally you have to keep going until one of us goes, let's do that. And it's like we've got to convince ourselves, but it then makes it quite straightforward to write because you've already gone through that rigor of almost arguing against yourself.
When you get to the right, you're capturing the stuff that you've already discussed and debated. I think what's also really interesting is on the podcast that you recorded with Sarah, you made a lot of imposter syndrome and how language is one of the things that creates it. And I think now that you have a body of work, particularly one that is so well researched and sourced, and you've written it in a language, thank you very much for allowing me to read.
I know you were a beta reader.
I know, to read one of the transcripts. Really, it's amazing. It's written in a very easy to understand language. I think it's going to do a lot to help fight imposter syndrome if, and it's a big if, you can help with this if marketers can resist the temptation to create more acronyms and just start, continue chasing shiny things.
Yes, I completely agree. But I think it takes bravery to not use the latest language for the same thing that you've been doing for 10 years. But in a way, it makes you stand out because you don't sound like you're just, it's not marketing bingo. You're talking about something that is fundamentally very straightforward. So for example, Sarah and I are both interviewing people at the moment for a project, and our first question is, what is the greatest market opportunity for the business? Okay. And the fact that these are interviews about brand, and that is where we're starting, it's really interesting watching people's reactions because they're like, oh, you don't want to talk about the colour of the logo.
What's the market opportunity? Commercial, bang, there you go, right
because
between the eyes.
If you know where you're headed, then you start to know where you're playing it and it's the Martin stuff, right? Where to play. And you start to understand how you're going to have to show up and who you're competing against. And then you can start working out what the brand needs to be. But if you don't start there, you've no idea.
That's a good point.
Right?
Good point, yeah.
But yeah, I'm so proud of the book, and it'll be out April, and there will also be a course, and there will also be coaching available.
Okay, so talk to me about the course.
The motivation is scale. Like, you know, I would like to go to my grave having passed on everything that I have learned to as many people as possible. People, they learn in different ways. They appreciate things in different. They have time to learn in different ways.
Yep.
So for some people, having a book where the spine is broken and they've got their post-it notes in and they've highlighted it and it sits on their desk is one way to do it. But what I found often when you go in and you've got to drive change within marketing and within a business around its brand is that you have to get everybody to understand the methodology and a sort of common way of thinking before you can even get on with the work.
Yep.
And so thinking about what Sarah and I have had to do to kind of educate and get everybody's heads in the same place, if you can put a team on a course where they all get that and they can keep going back to it, and also it gives us a chance to give all the tools and templates that you wouldn't normally get because you can't put them in the book. So being able to download the research guides and, you know, the presentation templates and things like that. And then, you know, there are some amazing agencies and there are amazing brand strategists and marketing strategists. There's fantastic people that you can work with. So just really thinking about how we can help and add value. I think it's more to do with coaching. So either coaching the leaders to help them sell in what has to be done and the best way to do it. Because that's quite nerve-wracking when you're facing off against finance, operations, product kind of mindsets, right? Versus the teams who are actually doing the work and want to problem solve, like we could do this, or we've run into this roadblock, or this isn't working. So we're going to offer coaching both to support the leader, but also to support the teams to do it themselves and to choose the right agencies and partners and so on to work with, just to encourage them and support them. But, you know, for me, success is people going, I totally get this. I get it. I know how to do it. I'm good. Thank you so much. You know.
It's interesting. I think one of the things I really liked about, this isn't just an advertisement for it, obviously, but I really like the work because the work is going to be very helpful, and I'll explain how I think or why I'm very excited about it in just a minute. But I think what I love about your approach is how doable things are as a result. So because there are other well-known branding, you know, brand management courses out there where it gives you like a very quick or a comprehensive introduction to brand management, and you finish it and then it's like, and now what? I can take my learnings in, but there are no tools or playbooks or outcomes, all that kind of stuff that you've put in your book. People can, particularly if they can then through a course, can kind of download and use those tools, the presentation templates and that kind of stuff. I think it's really, really helpful. I
think when you work in an organisation, it, you know, it's idiosyncratic. It has politics. It has, you know, things come out of left field at you. And if you feel uncertain about what you've got to do and how to do it and why you're doing it, then it's really hard to also cope with the fact that you're on quicksand. Because often when a brand is suffering, when a business is not growing, it feels like you're on quicksand. And so if you can feel like you really know what you're doing, but what you're trying to figure out is the best way to get it through the organisation and make it happen, I just think that's a much easier place to be than if you not really sure. And also the problem is when you get advice from people, it can be very particular. And so you always feel like you've got to say yes or no to it. Whereas if you understand what all the options and the whys are, you can take your own view on it and you can help shape it. And so you're not beholden to anyone else. You're part of making it happen. And I think that's more satisfying.
So I'm engaged in 2 or 3 projects at the moment. They're kind of consulting type, brand consulting type projects where the clients have a portfolio, quite a complicated portfolio of brands, different geographies, different positionings, different price points. All 3 have grown aggressively through M&A. And so what they're now in that consolidate stage. And in each case, part of the role is to get an internal team up and running, an internal team in a business to business. I don't like that categorization, but they're not selling consumer goods. They're selling services and products to other businesses. And they haven't had a traditional brand management training like you would if you went to a FMCG company as a marketer. So this material allows us very quickly to get everybody internally to exactly the same place.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the team can use the same language and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited about it, because for someone like me, when I've got to go, you mentioned politics earlier, often the job when an external consultant comes in to talk about brand is to start with is getting the naysayers and, you know, the old sweats, you know, who've been there and done it for years and years, trying to get them on board. And I think that the work you've created will be really helpful to people like me.
I think if you can disarm and educate in a way that does not put people's backs up, then you can start to have real conversations where you're understanding what levers you have, and they're the same levers. I don't know why it is with brand. I think it is with marketing as well. So people don't really understand what it is. And so they sort of make up what they think it is in a way that you don't do that with finance or with operations or with, you know, other parts of a business. I still haven't got to the bottom of why that is.
But that's a subject you and I have discussed a lot this year, both on episodes and obviously offline. But, you know, this misunderstanding of what marketing is, I got my statistics completely wrong. I think when you and I talked about it for show 100, you know, when I mentioned the growth of in-house marketers, but actually the trend wasn't wrong. The actual numbers were wrong, and someone, thank you very much, rated and pointed out the right numbers. Yeah. I can't remember what they were now.
But it's grown, right?
But
more
it's
people employed.
Almost doubled, yeah. We're teaching people to believe what marketing is because they see the output and they think, oh, that's marketing.
Yes.
What they don't see is all the work that goes behind it, all the strategy that goes behind it, all the thinking, all the planning, all the kind of stuff actually that you've written about in the book. I'm really excited to see the final thing. I cannot wait. I may even push myself or one or two of our other people through the course, particularly if we're going to recommend it to clients.
You'll definitely be at the launch though, won't you? I'm sure there'll be champagne. I'll
definitely be at the launch, yeah. I'll see if I can find something other than a blue shirt for that. So we've learned a lot on the show this year as well. And I think in the year ahead, I think I'd quite like to shake the format up a bit. And a couple of our listeners have written in with some really good ideas. Ooh. Yeah, for how we can shake it up. I think one of the interesting things to start with, I'm always very transparent about the experiments we run on this podcast, because other podcasters or other marketers, I think, can learn from that. So we did a whole load of experiments in the middle of the year where we went to 2 shows a week by effectively splitting the show in half and doing a Tuesday and a Thursday. We are publishing, or have published, by the time this goes out, it will be published, the analysis of that experiment, what we wanted to do, what we were trying to achieve, what the effects were. I'm not going to talk about them today, but that's published.
Brilliant.
Towards the tail end of this year, we also did another experiment. So you will know, because you and I had the blood, sweat and tears when we were writing episodes with the lovely Pete, who was writing doing some of our copywriting for us, the intro, mid-roll, outro approach. So there was quite a lot of editorial in our shows. Yeah. And a couple of our listeners wrote in to say, while they like it, it's a bit scripted, and what they really want to hear, what they tune in for, is the guests. Mm-hmm. So we've run an experiment where we get rid of the beginning, the end, and the middle, and we just have the interview. Mm-hmm. And I'm ashamed and so sad to tell you that each week the numbers are getting smaller and smaller. You're a marketer, Rachel. Why? Help me understand what's going on.
Because if you like that person, or you think that what they do for a living is relevant to you, you'll listen, and if not, you won't. Whereas if it's a Unicorny show in which the topics discussed get chewed over and thought, like almost like you hear the reaction of the people listening to it. Yeah. If you get that, call it editorial, but you're chewing it over, right? Then you know you're going to get that anyway, and then you might learn something as well from the...
There's a reason.
I don't know. There's a reason. Well, there's almost like a comfort. I know I'll get something from this podcast because they're going to chew over whatever's discussed, and I'm going to learn something, even if the guest is not, I don't know, a name I know, or from a company I care about, or in a sector that suits me. I think there's just more dynamism to it, really. So
interestingly, when we did the show on neuroscience, one of the great takeaways was that only 10% of your content ever gets remembered.
If that, right?
10%. But actually...
Should we do that 10% now? Well, then they can just tune out the rest.
So if you didn't tune in on Christmas Eve, you won't know that we discussed this thing then. And I'd suggested actually that we only do the 10%. So we decide what the 10% is, and we do like a 5-minute show. That's it.
Perfect.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, that's not going to work, right? But if we take the premise of the 10%, it may be that people are tuning in and listening to the show only for the summary at the end. It's like, I don't need to listen to the previous 45 minutes. I can just listen to the 5 minutes at the end and I get all my key takeaways. That could be a thing. That's
a digested read.
Yeah.
So The Guardian did that years ago. I don't know if they still do it, but they did they'd do the book review.
Yeah.
And then they would do the digested read, which was like the paragraph.
Oh, yeah.
And then they do the digested read, which would be one sentence, like a tweet, kind of thing.
Okay.
And I just think that was so funny because I wanted to almost look at where people's eyes went when they read to see. I mean, obviously I can't, but I think it's the dynamic. I think it's hearing from somebody and understanding their perspective on how you add value.
Yep.
And then having someone or having two people ideally chew over what you take from that. Like, what does that mean? Why might you agree or disagree? The challenge is if you do one or the other, I suspect from your experiments, actually the listening figures would go down and not up.
They do. So I think what we're going to do this year is we're going to introduce some more voices. So, which is good, I think. I mean, I've really enjoyed sharing the episodes with you. And I'd like to continue you and me anchoring these things.
Yeah.
We got a little bit conceptual, and we talk about marketing leadership and organizational design and culture. We've talked about that stuff a lot. And I think I'm being asked to get a lot more hands-on type content too, like to talk about creativity and effectiveness and what it actually looks like, particularly now that we're on video.
Yeah.
Like we could be showing ads and talking about them. So I'm going to invite a few of the creative and other voices that I know from my day job to come and run their own show and interviews, I think.
Yeah, brilliant.
And then someone else came up with a really good idea. I was away with some friends last week. And he said, why don't you just UGC it? User-generated content, for those that don't know the TLA. And I thought, now hang on a sec, that's really interesting. Like we've built this extraordinary community of marketers and academics and authors. Why don't we let's give people their own shows within the Unicorny thing? What do you think about that?
I think that'd be great. If people who know Unicorny could interview people that they want to interview to talk about what they want to talk about in terms of adding value, then you and I can listen and help people understand the takeaways and also what other ideas there could have been. I think that would be amazing. You've had some extraordinary people on, and it's that sort of moment where it's like if each one of them wanted to interview somebody that they've always wanted to interview, I think we get some magic.
And also imagine so viewers and listeners won't get or see this unfortunately yet, but the community, the power of the community that we're building in the background, like if you like the Unicorny alumni, and if we get our alumni bringing the people who they rate really highly in, this is going to be a very special group of people.
I think so, because it's by the people and for the people. Yeah, I really like that.
And so then the question is, how do the people who follow the podcast get to experience that?
Yes.
Unicorny, the conference.
Oh, hello.
What do you think? So
I think that'd be amazing.
Wouldn't it be great? So, we need to find some sponsors. But if we could bring in some of the big speakers, like I'd love to see Jeffrey Moore on stage running a keynote at the Unicorny conference. Yeah. It would be amazing. Or to get Ben Bensau over from Paris to talk about innovating, and we could have I think we could have a really good event.
I think we could. I would love to go to an event that is intellectually rigorous and inspiring and debate and discussion.
Only the very best on stage. Be awesome. I've
been to quite a few conferences this year where I worked on my book whilst listening.
So say that. Do you know, it's a real shame. I bought a conference a couple of years ago. I ended up killing it because it wasn't.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it wasn't appropriate, and it was in the search engine optimization world.
Okay.
And it was a world I didn't know or understand, and I wanted to get to understand it. I thought, what better way than actually owning the conference and then going and seeing what's happening around it. It didn't work out for
I love the way you think.
For various reasons.
Some people just bought a ticket, but
Well, it wasn't running. That was the point.
Okay.
I'm not saying I paid very much for it, by the way. I sounded grand when I said I bought the conference.
Yeah.
It was very cheap because it hadn't run for a few years. I got to learn a lot. I got to learn enough that I knew I didn't want to be buying agencies that did that.
Yes.
I wanted to go the other end and do much more of the creative stuff.
Yes.
But anyway, I too have been to conferences this year where I spent most of my time outside the conference rooms meeting people.
Yes.
Because what's been going on inside the conference rooms hasn't been helpful for me.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're bad conferences. In every case, I think there were people who went who got so much value from it. It's just they're not targeted at me.
Yeah.
And I want to create a podcast for marketing leadership that is going to stretch. And actually, which, as we know, includes non-marketers too.
Yeah, I mean...
Like an EO or FO should be able to come to this conference and enjoy it. Yeah. Cool. Well, you heard it here first. We just made that up. We're going to do a conference. We've just got to work out how we're going to budget it.
We'll find a way.
We'll find a way.
We will find a way, because if you can get the movers and shakers in a room where they emerge from it having learned and knowing more and thinking differently, right?
Yeah.
And having made connections with each other, that's gold. Because it's really hard to get out of the office when you're busy. I mean, I remember it. You look at your diary and it starts with conference calls at 8 and there's some at 10 o'clock at night. Totally. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And so to be motivated to go for a day and spend time with people, you have to know you're going to get something from it.
The challenge we might have is going to be expensive, because the kind of caliber of person we're asking to speak ain't going to do it for free. We're going to have to pay people to be up on stage speaking, because they are all A-list. I'll send you a list of I have a short list of people, but they're all A-list. Yeah, and I think it's worth paying quite a lot for. But apart from anything else, that's how people get into the community, and the community's all A-list.
Okay,
so that's one thing we're going to do next year. And then we talked on our show 100 a little bit about this 27 states thing.
Yes, I'm really excited about that.
Me too. So I've put a framework together. I've created the business logic that looks at what you might use in each of the 27 different combination of states. And I think you and I are going to run this as our original content this year.
I'm so in. I'm just not going to let you refuse to have me part of it. I think that's basically
cool. Well, it's always better to have two brains than one. More than two obviously gets a little bit difficult. But I think there's quite a lot of work to do in the background. But if the idea at the moment is that we're going to find for each of the 27 different states. Now, if you didn't listen to show 100, I'm just going to explain it very briefly now.
Yeah, please.
There's a bun fight been going on in kind of nerdy marketing world that no one else really cares about. But there's a bunch of academics who are throwing their handbags at each other about whether segmentation, targeting, and positioning is relevant anymore.
Yes.
And so segmentation, targeting, and positioning in very, very shorthand term is you cannot afford to market to the whole market. You take your whole market, you break it up into cohorts of of like-minded or like-feeling people. You work out which one needs your product the most, and you then go after them, right? STP in shorthand.
Yeah.
At the other end, in the blue corner, if you like, we have MBA, market-based asset theory, largely the work of Byron Sharp and Ehrenberg Bass, which says that doesn't work anymore. You always market to whole market because of what's called the 95-5 rule.
Yeah.
95% of people are not in market for your product, so therefore, but you still need to communicate to them so that when they come in market, they have mental availability. Key concept there. So you market to everybody to try and become memorable, and that you have to match that with almost ubiquitous distribution. So make it easy to buy, make it available to buy, and your brand will grow. And the book was called How Brands Grow. So in the blue corner, we've got market-based asset theory. In the red corner, we've got STP, segmentation, targeting, positioning. And it's like, and the debate online in 2024 was which one of these is right.
So polarized.
And it's just not. Well, neither. So what struck me from speaking to Ben Bensow and Jeffrey Moore and knowing the Blue Ocean Strategy stuff, Chan Kim and Rennie Mo-Bourne, their work, is there are many other factors that are being completely ignored in this discussion. And you can't do all of them. So we've chosen 3 for this model. We've chosen product maturity, because every product has a life cycle. It used to be a core skill of marketers, obviously, to understand product life cycle.
Bless the 4 Ps.
I know, exactly. Every company has power or lack of power based on size and the kind of stuff they do. So company power is an important one, and market maturity is also really important. So, and if you then give a low, medium, high to each of those 3 states, you get 27 states. Where you can have low, 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 medium, low, low, high, all the various different variants of that give you 27 states. So what we've done is we've created the business logic that says for each of those states is segmentation, targeting, positioning, or market-based assets theory, or a combination of both, most appropriate. So we've created the business logic that identifies what we think the right way is.
Yeah.
We've gone out and we've researched it. We have 27 companies who have applied that combination of theories at that stage of their evolution, and we're going to interview their marketers.
I mean, I just think that's gorgeous.
It's cool, isn't it?
Because it's partly it's a decision tree.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Answer the questions, follow the path, and you will get to an answer. Yeah. But then learning about what's worked and what hasn't worked from companies that are essentially in a similar situation to you.
Yes.
I think that's fantastic, but it's also fantastic when you change job, because what it forces you to do is to come back again and go, right, I'm going to do the decision tree for this business, what is needed, because so many people, I think, rinse and repeat out of comfort.
Yes.
Right? But this gives you a way to go through the decision making to work out what the right thing is. I also think it's a way for cross-functional teams, so not just the marketers, but their colleagues as well, to have a conversation in which they end up knowing how they're going to have to execute as a business, what the right strategy is.
That's a really good point.
Gives you a common methodology,
so I haven't
doesn't it?
seen this as a way of, because one of the themes that comes up in the podcast all the time is how do marketers coalesce the team and bring sales and engineering and all the various different, HR, how do they bring everybody to the table to understand what's going on? This could be a nice way of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary, but I'm doing some interviews at the moment for some research to help someone out, right? And I'm starting with the business problem because I want to know what the model is, right? I want to know, what is your business strategy? Does it imply that what you're doing is actually a franchise? Yeah. Or does it imply that you are a locally run global organization?
Yes.
Or does it imply that you are a central service line or product driven? Because I don't know what your brand and marketing should be until I understand how you're going to make more money.
Yes.
Right? And so
totally. Yeah. Okay.
It's really that conversation, having everybody agree what that business strategy is, what that market strategy is, then makes it possible to go away and come back with a marketing strategy or a brand strategy where people can recognize that it fits the brief. But if you don't have that conversation, then it really quickly descends into subjectivity about whether people like stuff or not, right?
Yeah, totally. God, totally. Yes.
So I think it would be an enabler for businesses doing their annual strategic planning about where is the market, where do they want to get, what situation are they in, what is the best methodology for it. And also, I think it would encourage people to look outside their industry to find insight from other businesses who have been in that situation and understand what has worked and what's failed. Because if you only do what is in your line of vision, you're basically copying someone else you're competing with.
Yeah, totally. And yes, what this will do is give you the grounding, the background for why you should be doing it. As we all know, it always has to start with why, according to Mr. Silek.
Yeah, totally.
What I also really like about it, so when I've been out and tested the concept with a few CMOs from the community. I mentioned that I was out doing some consulting work on like multi-region, multi-position brand portfolios. And what they really like about the concept of 27 states is it gives them almost like a playbook for their brand portfolio, because for each brand in each location, at each price point, they're going to be different.
Yes.
The attributes, the states are going to be different. And so this allows them to have a unified approach and some business logic that sits behind the decisions they're making about how they handle each brand in each of those locations at each different positioning point in the market.
And I think that takes you all the way down into what the experience is, the go-to-market, the kind of channels that you need to communicate through. Because if you look at your geography of where your business works, and instead of seeing it as, these 8 countries make 95% of our money, right?
Yeah.
But see it as these markets are quite mature and they need a specific approach to it. These markets are very emerging. They're young, and even though they're completely all over the world, they actually have all these commonalities. I think then you would be able to make decisions about how to execute in those markets that would be much more logical. Because at the moment, what it usually comes down to is where's the centre of gravity for the business that will get all the money, right? HQ country usually gets the money. Although I have worked with one company where the HQ wasn't in the country they made most money in.
Oh, really?
And that was interesting because they were forced to not just think about their own backyard.
Tax? I'm thinking tax.
No, I'm just not going to tell you. But otherwise, what happens is because you're always in a situation in business where either you rinse and repeat from last year, especially in terms of budgets, right?
Totally,
Finance likes to just add or subtract percentages on what you already have, or you look at it for which markets make you the most money and how can you get more efficient at making that money. But it's quite rare that people look at it in terms of the potential or in terms of what state of play it's in, right? Yeah. Anything that gives you an ability to have a common conversation where you work through what the right strategic approach is, I think is a winner, a complete winner, because it's such a precursor to everything.
Well, we'll find out, won't we?
Well, that's what's so exciting.
It might be complete bullshit. Be wrong. So I should say we're not just going to look at the winners. Graham Wiley pointed that out to me when we interviewed him. You have to look at the losers too.
Yes.
So we're going to try why didn't it work? Now, I've done some preliminary research in that area. In most cases, from what I've seen from the companies that I've been looking at, so I already have 54 companies identified that I want to talk to, and I've started trying to get in touch with either founders, CEOs or CMOs of those companies to see if they'll come to talk to us in the studio. Of the ones that failed, what I'm seeing is it's external stuff largely, not internal stuff that led to demise, whether that be market condition or government interference. I think what I'm seeing, but it's very early stage and we won't know till we speak to them, but the marketing theory side I think holds up. I think that the marketing stuff was going well. It could be a complete waste of time, but we are going to have a lot of fun finding out. We will. And then honestly, it feels like a whole podcast series, but it also feels like a book. I mean, I'm wondering actually, so, just 20 minutes ago, I was saying one of the problems is we've got a little bit too conceptual. And you and I have just been talking about a conceptual framework for the last 15 minutes. If it's about understanding the businesses that succeeded and failed by implementing that strategy, because that's real, that's tangible. And so it takes the intellectual, the why and the, and makes it really like, what did you do? How did that work? Because that's the problem, I think, is that even if you understand the intellectual side of things, real life is different. And so, even getting down to, we did everything. So I was talking to Leo on a podcast, which just went live a few weeks ago. And there was, afterwards we had some food and we were talking about one of the companies we worked on right at the beginning of knowing each other. And of course, what I had forgotten, which of course he hadn't forgotten, is that the company, so I was asked by Leo to create the brand for the business. We did it I had 7 weeks. It was over Christmas. Christmas Eve, I was in Edinburgh phoning the police to get them to get into the agency to get the artwork off the server because it had gone bust because of fraud. No! Yeah. And it was in those days where I was literally all the artwork was on the server and I was just like, office. I'm going live 7th of January, So we launched that business and then some months later it was acquired and I had to kill the brand. And what I had forgotten is that the reason that happened was because of 9/11. Because the funding disappeared overnight. And so instead of us buying another company bought us. Right? And so that's the thing, right? You can do everything right. Totally. And these curveballs come. Totally. It's quite reassuring to know it wasn't your fault, that you did the right thing. So I think this will be an interesting mix, actually, of intellectual and practical and it's a good observation. I think, now you've mentioned it, I think a couple of the brands I was looking at actually did get acquired. So if we sort of picture the sea where there's just sort of fish randomly running around eating each other, it doesn't matter how well you're doing. Actually, it's probably a testament to the fact that things are going well if someone else acquires you, because very few people in this market go around, or any market, go around buying duds. They want to buy good companies with good brands who know where they're going.
You want to make sure you get your money's worth, right?
Well, we'll see. But I think that's why I wanted to get a bit more, like, let's get some creative people in to talk about creativity and, you know, the currency of our business, which is the output, I think. So,
yes.
The year ahead then, so that's our year for the podcast and for the episode. If you'd like to take part, by the way, if you want to contribute, if you've got any ideas to help us with 27 states, please do. I'll get a website put up and we can open source like either the research or some of the thinking. That'd be great. And then should we agree now, so we commit to it, we're going to turn this into a book.
Yeah.
27 states.
Yeah, let's do it. I've learned how publishing works. So
you know how publishing works.
Let's do it again.
I know how to make shit up.
Yeah.
Together
we can do it. Honestly, I'd really love to do that.
So we just shook on that. The 27 states, you heard it here first. It's going to be a book. Right, for the year ahead though, for our marketers for the year ahead now, how do you think marketers need to be thinking about 2025? Because the market is crapola still, isn't it?
Well, it is, but also I think next year is quite uncertain.
Yeah.
It's not a year where you look into it and you think, I know exactly how this is going to play out. I mean, partly that's the American election, right? Partly it's geopolitical dynamics going on, right?
Yep. And there's a lot of uncertainty.
There's a lot of uncertainty. So I think you have to plan for uncertainty, actually. Yeah. I think you have to sort of not fear it, but embrace it.
Yeah.
And when I look at next year, I think my plea would be to almost return to the basics.
Okay.
What worries me a lot in marketing as a marketer is that we are we do love talking about trends and new stuff and shiny things, and we love giving things new names, and, you know, we love all of that. The principles of marketing have been quite well established for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And that when you are in a situation of uncertainty, yes, it's great to experiment. It's great to try new things, whatever label you put on them.
Yeah.
But understanding your audience, right? Knowing what products are right for them, what services are right for them, how they buy, how they shop, how they want to engage, how they want to purchase, and how to help them get the most value out of what they bought, seem to me to be fundamentals that don't require us to sit and talk about next generation marketing or AI and I felt this quite profoundly the other week. So I was at a conference and every topic felt very very trend based. Yeah. And I was thinking, I can't imagine any of my finance leader friends turning up and spending an hour and a half talking about how AI in forecasting has changed the way. I mean, I feels like we need to roll it back and really focus on the fundamentals. And the reason I say that is when things are uncertain, budgets are they just sort of disappear from you, right?
They're on and off all the time. Yeah.
But if you are very, very clear about what you've got to do and everything else is nice to have, I think that the business as a whole is more likely to protect that because it understands what it delivers as value.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, otherwise you get what's just happened in a huge tech company where they've just disbanded all their marketing from being centralized. They put performance marketing into sales. They put comms and brand into corporate affairs.
Wow.
They've sort of taken apart what is actually working. And then who knows, in a few years' time, it'll be, it'll go back together again. But what I heard from that was these are almost like departments that execute. My question was, well, what's the strategy?
What's interesting on the project I sort of chortled a little bit about the project you're doing at the moment. You said I started with a business problem.
Yeah.
And the fact you had to explain that's where people start, that was always the place to start. But if you do that with your marketing department, you can't start with a problem because all you can do is execute. You can't ask any questions.
You can't but also people don't take you seriously. Like as a marketer who leads, you are part of a leadership team that is, at worst standing still. But what you're really aiming for is to grow the business. Like everybody there is responsible for growing revenue.
Yep.
you've got to start with how are we going to do that? And how do you do that when there's lots of uncertainty? I mean, there's other things going on as well. So some other business leaders were talking to me about how private equity is sort of going into...
I was about to mention.
Going into industries where you wouldn't typically have seen them. And what they're going to do is immediately make a move on those businesses to try and make them as efficient as possible, right? Yeah. But if you do that yourself by really understanding what it is that your business is trying to achieve and what you have to do to make that happen, you can actually become very efficient. And I don't mean efficient like slashing jobs and, producing all your content with AI and all that kind of nonsense. I'm talking about what do you actually have to do in order to be able to sell those products and services. I think that there is an opportunity with that certainty of strategy to actually make businesses incredibly efficient and free up resource and free up capability without having to have an outside voice come in and do it, right?
I really love that. So we spoke to a guy called Peter Russell Smith really early in the episode, and he's got a background in private equity and software, among other things. Yeah. And he told us a similar thing. You don't need to be pre-backed to do this. Yeah. You understand what their playbook is. You can do it yourself. So here's my challenge for Unicorners. This is your challenge. Tonight is New Year's Eve. You're going to go off and have a blast with your friends and family. And tomorrow is a bank holiday. When you come back to work on the 2nd, 3rd, 6th, 7th, whenever you're going to come back to work, imagine that you are coming into a brand new, freshly funded private equity company.
Love it.
And put a 100-day plan together. That 100-day value creation plan. Simplify as much as you can. Identify where you can create value within that 100 days and then execute it.
Honestly, educate on efficiency in your business because so I had I'm going to call it brunch. It sounds really pretentious because really I was just skiving off editing. But with an amazing CMO this week who was in town, and she was describing how she'd had to educate her colleagues, non-marketing colleagues, who were talking about how AI and making content with AI wasn't that amazing because you could become more efficient. And she was saying, well, actually, no, I have to spend more money on brilliant creative and real compelling thought leadership, because what the AI content is doing is producing the average, is based on everything that's been made before. Yeah. So it's essentially a distilled read of the average point of view that's already been published. And so it just creates noise, but no cut through. I think of it as plastic in the ocean, right? Okay. It's just more stuff. Yep. And so she was saying that actually makes us less efficient because I now have to spend more money doing something that gives us a spike where people actually want to engage. Wow. Because what they see is just blah, 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 right?
So all the content that other departments are putting out thinking they're helping, they're actually self-harming.
Yes.
Bloody hell.
Yeah,
I hadn't thought of it that way.
And when she said that, I thought, that has been my worry, is that basically, it's AI making content for AI, in a sense, right? So, I mean, creativity, the ability to cut through the noise, the ability to show up as yourself and be recognised as a brand is so important if people are going to trust and feel confident about making a purchase from you. Yeah. And so if you are generic and vanilla and copious in your generic vanilla-ness, you know, what are you doing? Because you're basically becoming like a category norm rather than that relevant, differentiated, you know, incredibly easy to buy from business.
So dial down the volume.
So yeah, it goes back to quality again. And that's why you return to basics on what do you actually have to do. The last thing you'll actually be having to do is to produce copious amounts of content or spray and pray, right? It's just not.
I love that. It's also a really good way to end this year because I had a bit of a rant on our on Christmas Eve about this dreaded more for less comment, because the de facto belief, I mean, there are loads of reasons for it, but one of them is a de facto belief that more is better. Now, more revenue, obviously, or more profit is definitely better, but more content is not better, as you've just said. In fact, more content is worse. If you want to spend less, do less, but make it better quality.
Yeah, and support the buyer on their journey.
Yeah.
What are their exam questions? What do they actually want to know? And how do they want to know it? Serve that before you do anything else.
Wow.
I know, right?
I think that's a really good way for people to think about going into the new year.
I do too.
Well, Happy New Year to you, Rachel.
Me too.
We'll see you in January, February, I don't know, sometime with our new format show. We've got a few backed up from this year, which are going to be the same format. But I think from now on, we'll start recording the new format.
Amazing.
And see how it goes. And if you like or dislike any of our shows, our formats, our experiments, or even just something you've seen or heard, why not get in touch? Unicorny@selbyallenson.com. We'd love to hear from you. Rachel, have a great time. I'm off to the country now to party with my friends.
Amazing. I have champagne on ice. I'll see you next year.
See you next year.
Bye.
There you go. That is us for 2024. It's a wrap. Thank you very much indeed for following us, for listening, and for liking our podcast this year. It is a labour of love making a podcast, as you may well know. It's an awful lot of commitment, and a lot of evenings and weekends throughout this year have been spent writing, drafting, editing, recording. We've got a fantastic crew that has built the podcast for us. But anyway, that's enough, because you have a New Year's Eve party to go to. I hope you have a great time, and we will see you next year.